Well, FPL Game Week 27 is nearly upon us, and here is a summary of my team selection and final thoughts going into the game week. Okay, so game week 27 means a double game week for 4 teams, and those are Brighton, Brentford, Crystal Palace and Southampton. My two favourite, and it's quite clear on those really, are Brighton and Brentford. Given that Crystal Palace and Southampton play two of the best teams in the league as part of their doubles, I'm not entirely sure we should be rushing in to get their assets. The only one I'd consider is probably James Ward-Prowse, purely because he doesn't blank in game week 28. And to be honest, due to the fact he's on all the set pieces and penalties, and that's where he gets quite a lot of his returns on, he can get them against pretty much anyone. So I'd say James Ward-Prowse is probably the only guy out of those two teams that I'd be really looking to bring into my team. As for Brighton and Brentford, we all know they've got some great assets from their teams. And in the next few slides, I'm going to show you which ones I think are the best. So starting off with my goalkeepers and defenders in my team, I'm gone with David Raya in goal. Currently the top scoring goalkeeper in FPL, and I think over the next 3 weeks, he's probably the best of the bunch. Given that Sanchez now is a minute's doubt, didn't play the weekend just gone and still started, I think Raya takes the position as number one. I probably previously would have maybe said Sanchez just for his increased clean sheet likeliness, but now he's gone from the team. I think Raya, with his saves bonus, he's averaging nearly 5 saves per game. I think he's an absolutely excellent option for 27. He doesn't blank in 28 and he doubles again in 29. So you can quite happily, to be honest, you can quite happily keep him for the rest of the season given the point scoring that he's been knocking up. Gone for Rico Henry as my pick of the Brentford defenders. Did that last week on my wild card, so I've already made the decision. It's not like I'm going to transfer him in or anything. For me, I just think he's probably the most attacking of the 3 Brentford defenders, and I've put a little feature on them here really. I think there are 3 Brentford defenders you can choose from. You've got Ethan Pinnock, Rico Henry and Ben Mee. For me, I probably, lots of me's being said, but for me, I'd probably verge away from Ben Mee. I think just because of his price and the fact that Rico Henry and Pinnock are so close to him in terms of expected returns, he's probably the one I'd rule out. But ultimately, there's not much to choose between them. Pinnock obviously scored against Fulham, and he is the cheapest of the 3, but I think there really isn't much to choose between them. And if you're deciding, probably price is the one factor that helps. But for me, I think Rico Henry offers the best sort of price, attacking upside of the 3, so I've gone for him. Estupiñán from Brighton, I think he's the strongest of their defenders. Lewis Dunk is a close second just because of how nailed he is, and he always has an outside chance for attacking returns, but Estupiñán seems to be getting forward at pretty much every opportunity. He's nailed in the team without much competition for his place, and he's the top expected points per for a defender this game week, and you'll see on a later slide, I'll list that later on. And then Kieran Trippier is my 3rd defender. He's the best single defender in the game, in my opinion. Top scoring defender, and yeah, you got Wolves at home. I don't really think Wolves are that great going forwards, and now they've got Nick Pope and Bruno Guimaraes back. I'd like to think that Newcastle can solidify things defensively as well. So that's my goalkeeper and back 3. Now for my midfielders, I've gone for Solly March and Mitoma. They were in my wildcard team, so makes sense to start them this week. Saka and Rashford as the other 2. Given, unfortunately, how the last weekend played out, I benched Mitoma and played March, which completely backfired on me, and I didn't own McAllister at all. So the 2 Brighton players that scored, I either benched them or didn't select them on my wild card. And I've just got a little comparison of the 3 here, really. I think McAllister is probably the best option of the Brighton midfielders. Sounds silly with me not picking him on my wild card, but I just didn't see the upside of him at the time. I think last week's game really helped me see the role that he's playing in that team at the moment. He's playing what some might call, and I believe it's above average FPL as the channel. I had a comment on one of my previous videos about that, so full credit to them for pointing this out. But he seems to be playing the free sort of number 8 Gundogan role in midfield. You remember the season where Gundogan scored nearly 20 goals, I think, for Man City? I think McAllister's playing that sort of role where he's making the late runs into the box and getting on the end of chances. So yeah, when he's playing that role, I think he's the best of the three. I think there's a slight risk that he drops further back in some games where there's a bit of rotation for Brighton, and he's on the penalties and takes pretty much all the free kicks within scoring range as well. So I do think McAllister's probably the strongest option, despite me not actually picking him. March, I think, has the best underlying numbers. De Zerbi puts a lot of attacking responsibility on him. I think I've seen people on Twitter suggest that in previous roles that De Zerbi's had, he's put a lot of attacking impetus on the right winger, which is obviously the position that Solly March plays. His expected returns are the highest, but they're weighted a bit more towards assists. So he's definitely scored goals this season, no doubt about it, and he's got the ability to, but he definitely looks to get the assist, I think, more than score the goal. And as for Mitoma, he certainly passes the eye test, and on the eye, I think he's the best of the players, but in terms of underlying numbers, he's the worst. But he's still scoring goals, so that suggests to me that he's probably the most clinical of these three with his finishing. And then I've gone for Saka and Rashford as the other two. I think there's two best midfielders in the game, bar maybe Salah now, but I just think with their price, you've got to go for Saka and Rashford. Saka doesn't really need much explanation. He's probably definitely the best Arsenal midfielder. On penalties, plays every game, probably their talisman. Same for Rashford at the moment, in red-hot form for Man United, despite the loss to Liverpool. I expect them to bounce back against Southampton. I'll simply just bench him in game week 28 and then play him again for his double in 29. And yeah, March, Mitoma and Rashford will be the players that I bench going into game week 28. Then on to my forwards, I've gone for Kane, Haaland, and TONEY is currently my captain. But I am tempted to give it to Mitoma, and you'll see why later on. Kane, very consistent across the season, doesn't blank in game week 28, doesn't double in 29, so I could well transfer him out to a player that doubles, but I just think Forest and Southampton as his next two are too good not to be having him in my team. I think he's a great option going forwards. Erling Haaland, he could well be Ollie Watkins. If you're on a wild card this week, I'd consider picking Ollie Watkins over Erling Haaland. You'd miss the upside that Erling Haaland brings to you this week, but then you'd have a player that plays in game week 28 and doubles in 29, whereas Haaland blanks and has got Liverpool. And you can do all that without using a free transfer, whereas if you start with Haaland, you're going to have to take him out for one of your transfers for Watkins. That's what I'm going to do in game week 28, but I'll have the two free transfers to deal with that come game week 28, whereas, yeah, if you're wildcarding this week, you won't. And then Ivan Toney, he's the best option in my opinion this week. I think he'd be the most popular captain. We all know his upside. Plays every game for Brentford, 90 minutes, takes the penalties. He hasn't got a yellow card ban incoming in game week 27. Might well do in 28 if he picks up a couple of bookings in those two games, but that's a problem to deal with later down the line, in my opinion. I'm very glad he didn't get booked against Fulham, because that means he's a pretty safe option to start both of these games. And here is how the team looks as a whole. I've actually gone with Mitoma captain because in draft time he's got more expected points. I've done that just to boost the expected points total. The players I didn't mention, got Kepa, Zinchenko, Maddison and Botman on my bench. They're not going to feature this week purely because I think the options that I have started are better, but they'll all definitely come into game week 28 and they need to make my team because I don't have enough players, quite simply. And I should be able to field 11 by getting rid of Erling Haaland for Ollie Watkins. But yeah, as a whole, that's my team. And I thought I'd just finish this video off by showing you the expected points per position, or the top players per position for expected points, according to Draft Town this week. You can see on this screen, we've got the goalkeepers and the defenders. Raya Estupiñán leading the way for goalkeepers and defenders. And no real surprise, the list is dominated by players with a double game week. So the top four goalkeepers are the four teams with a double game week, and it's the same with defenders. Brentford and Brighton defenders, or the expected starting back four for each team, and then a couple of Southampton defenders thrown in as well. And yeah, you can see in a bit more detail on that list without me having to talk through it. Then on to the midfielders and strikers. As I was saying, somehow Mitoma is actually best for expected points this week. I think he's just accumulated so many returns across the season so far, and obviously he gets more points for a goal and clean sheets as well. I think all of that has factored into giving him the highest expected points. McAllister is a close second, very, very close with TONEY, only 0.1 points in it, so really not much to decide there. But similarly to the previous list, it's dominated by Brentford and Brighton players. And then you've got the big names sneaking in there as well. So Haaland near the top, Salah and Rashford, Darwin Núñez, Harry Kane, all of those guys are sneaking in the list. But yeah, obviously the top players this week are the ones from the best teams with the best fixtures with a double game week. And then just looking at the goal involvement and goal scoring or anytime goal scoring odds, it's quite an interesting look this game week. Given that Haaland isn't top of any of the expected points figures, it's quite interesting to see him still top of the anytime goal scoring percentage and near the top of the goal involvement odds as well. Interesting to see that first place and second place is actually Danny Welbeck. It remains to be seen if he's going to play both of these games in the minutes that he gets. Same with Ferguson as well, but I think these guys are great options if you want to go a bit different. They're not going to be particularly highly owned. I think most are going to have double Brighton midfield and defence. So if you buy yourself a forward, you've got a really good little differential there. The only thing, obviously, is if you buy a Brighton forward, they're going to blank in game week 28, and you might have to sacrifice a Watkins, a TONEY, a Haaland or a Kane to have them. That's the real downside. But looking at these points, I mean, could you go for a Brighton forward over Harry Kane maybe? I mean, looking at those sorts of stats kind of justifies it. But yeah, leave that for you to decide. Just thought it was interesting to show. And then we've got the clean sheet odds. What it hasn't done, unfortunately, is put together the combined clean sheet odds. If you were to do that, top of the list would be Brighton. And then you've got the rest of the clean sheet odds there. So other top teams I suggest are Man City, Man United, Newcastle, Tottenham, Arsenal, Liverpool. And you could probably stick Brentford, Chelsea and West Ham in there as well. I know Brentford have got 2 games with a third of a chance of a clean sheet. That obviously brings their total up a bit more than a third. So yeah, and probably Everton as well, maybe against Brentford. But I'd say if they're a third or less chance of keeping a clean sheet, you're probably not really going to be able to bank on one. So yeah, certainly looking at Southampton and Crystal Palace anyway, they might have double game weeks, but their clean sheet odds are really poor. And to be honest, I'd be inclined to agree with these underlying numbers. I don't think either of those teams are going to keep a clean sheet this week. And that concludes the video. A quick little run through of my team, the fixtures, how I think the game week's going to look, and some of the top players per position for expected points. If you enjoyed it, found it useful, please leave me a like rating on the video, subscribe to the Golden Goal channel. I'm really trying to hit 1,000 subscribers by the end of the season, so if you're enjoying this content and want to see more, I'd really appreciate it if you come along for the journey with me. And if you disagree with any of my picks or have any thoughts on the opinions I've just expressed in this video, I'd be happy to hear them. I don't mind if you have a different opinion to me. Ultimately, FPL is all about people with different opinions. If you all thought the same, the game would be boring. So yeah, please let me know in the comments what you think, and I'll see you in the next video.